Kabul Law School. Her doctoral research investigates the case for the inclusion of an international crime for terrorism and the Rome Statute of International Criminal Court. Azadeh holds an LLM in International Humanitarian Law and Human Rights from the University of Essex, and a second LLM in International Criminal Law as a Fulbright scholar from Ohio State University. In September 2021, Azadeh co-founded the Hamdali campaign, insisting vulnerable Afghans at the risk of persecution and advocating accountability for victims of atrocity crimes in Afghanistan. She has worked on humanitarian and human rights related projects in close collaboration with Afghan's justice institution. A very fantastic discussion, Azadeh, for talking to us a little bit about what the security situation is in Afghanistan. And you were mentioning about a report that you would like to refer to talk to us about the security defense and the situation of women in Afghanistan. So without further ado, thank you very much for joining our panel. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nigar. And I also wanted to, joining my colleagues, dear Farkhunda and also Parisa Jan, to express my gratitude and thanks to you, Dr. Nigar, and also Dr. Attar, and a dear friend, Farnaz Hashimi, who made this connection possible and this webinar. And I also wanted to express my gratitude and thanks for providing us this platform. Like Parisa said, that such platforms are extremely needed in the situation of women's rights in Afghanistan, because we need our voice to be heard, and the actions should be taken in regards to the women in Afghanistan, because the situation is extremely dire, and everything that we hear and the news and also by the people, media, that's just the tip of the iceberg, and the situation could be much more worse on the ground, because we have a complete blackout of media right now. So thank you very much, and I'm really thankful for this opportunity. It's very difficult to speak after wonderful remarks of Dr. Farkhunda and also Parisa Jan, but I'll try my best, and I'll try to express refer to some of the figures and facts of the report that was published yesterday by Kabul Now about the life under the Taliban's rule in Afghanistan. So I may refer a lot to my notes that to just express the testaments there. So as I will start with the remarks of Dr. Farkhunda and also Parisa Jan, when they said that the Doha Agreement, and there were a lot of talks that this is rebranding Taliban, actually saying that this is Taliban #2 or the changed Taliban. This Taliban will never do anything that will not oppress women in Afghanistan like they did in the end of 90s when they were in power. And this is actually a changed Taliban with so much worldviews, and now the Afghanistan will never be going back to what they had been in the late 90s. But unfortunately, you can see that it's much more worse than that, or probably the similar situation like in the end of 90s. Right now, what is the difference is that we have a lot of connections and a lot of resources that we can actually connect with the world from Afghanistan. So you hear what happened. That's the only difference from the 90s. As my two colleagues was mentioning, Taliban has banned women from public spheres and prohibited women from right to education, right to work, freedom of expression, assembly and movement, public participation, as much as going to a park. Afghanistan is the only country in the world right now that women is not allowed to go to the park for a walk. Forget about education and going to school, as school children, and being as young as 9 years old. Women's access to healthcare and the Taliban is yet another challenge that we often don't talk about much. It was also discussed by Dr. Farkhunda. So based on some reports from Afghanistan, Taliban has allegedly banned male doctors to treat female patients. And on confirmed sources, Taliban is actually campaigning very actively to ban contraceptive pills in Afghanistan, which is another challenge in facing women in Afghanistan. Since November 2020, a Taliban's Amir has issued a decree for implementation of strict Sharia law, and based on ever since, a report that was published yesterday, actually, 454 people has been flogged publicly and without any due process of the law or any witness testament and any due process of the law. As we're speaking today, at least 3 women activists have been detained by the Taliban, or we'll rather call it abduction, because Taliban is not a legitimate government, and therefore they have dismantled all the laws in the country, which means that any arrest or by the Taliban means abduction. 3 women and activists, and their crime has been the speaking against the oppressive regimes, and unfortunately, these are just the tip of the iceberg, as I mentioned, and the situation could be much more worse on the ground. So based on the reports that was published by Kabul Now yesterday, another concerning issue is the mysterious killing of women in Afghanistan since the Taliban takeover. This report says that at least 162 women were killed in 23 provinces of Afghanistan, and none of them have been investigated by the Taliban's de facto police or regime, and this mysterious killing has been actually attributed to the Taliban. While talking about women's rights under the Taliban's rule, we often forget about the dire situation of women who were in the security and police forces of Afghanistan. We are in touch through Hamdali, we're in touch with women in Afghanistan who used to serve in the national police of Afghanistan, and they were the sole breadwinner of their families, and right now they are out of work. And so in the past 18 years, these women have been in hiding in the fear of the fear of their lives, and they're being threatened by Taliban and different elements within the Taliban, and yet nobody is talking about them. When we refer their cases for emergency evacuation from Afghanistan because they're at risk of being persecuted by the Taliban, a lot of organizations who are active in Afghanistan and working on these evacuations and also providing support for these women, they do not fall under the categories that they actually trying to support them, because they say that they served in the military, and therefore we do not to keep our partition, we are not supporting anyone who served in the military. But the rule of the a few hundred or thousands of women who were in the police and security forces, their prime responsibility was actually responding to gender-based violence cases in Afghanistan. Gender-based violence has been one of the constant challenge in Afghanistan, and let's not forget that even before Taliban takeover, Afghanistan was rating one of the highest in terms of gender-based violence in the region. So these women were actually responding to these needs, and so I just wanted to say that while we talk about the dire situation of women in Afghanistan, we often tend to forget about the women who served in security forces, mostly in national police and in military. Their role have been mainly civilian positions, but right now they do not, they're not fitting in any categories to be evacuated from Afghanistan and also to receive support. We're in touch with a family in particular who doesn't have any male breadwinner in the household, and they were the only one who were working outside, and right now they have no means to get out of the house because having no mahram or male guardian to accompany them, they have no source of income. So just imagine their situation right now. What should they do? Parisa John and also Farkhanda John was referring to mental health of women right now. So according to this report that was published by Kabul Now, it says that more than 2,000 women have been admitted in Herat in only one hospital in the country in the past 1 year. And that's just a small figure that we don't know what's happening in the whole country. Imagine, like Farkhanda and Parisa was saying, a woman has been deprived of their basic rights, a right to just walk on the park, forget about education, forget about freedom of movement, assembly. We had women who were participating in protests and rallies in protest of the Taliban ban against their rights. These women had experienced one of the most violent crackdown by the Taliban. They have been detained, they have been imprisoned, they have been tortured, and in some extenses, unconfirmed report, they have been also raped. So imagine you have no right and absolutely whatsoever in the country as we experience and witness today in Afghanistan. The situation of women in the security forces who served in security forces even more grim right now. These women are being threatened for their life. They have been trained by Western military to respond to gender-based violence, because Afghanistan has one of the highest rate of gender-based violence in the region, even before Taliban takeover. So right now, these women, for their civilian roles, are being contested, being threatened, and also having deprived of any income or any sort of livelihood. Joining my call to international community and joining my colleagues in our appeal to the international community, I would like to say that Taliban does not represent the people of Afghanistan. That's a very clear-cut message from us. They do not represent any one of us. They do not represent any ethnic group of Afghanistan. Please do not recognize them. Please do not entertain into getting in a dialogue with them, because as Farhonda was saying, that the ideology is very much similar with international terrorist groups like ISIS in the region. There was a lot of calls that saying that Taliban has rebranded, Taliban has changed, this is Taliban number 2. This is very much different. But in practice, unfortunately, we have seen the Taliban in the past 18 months have done even worse damage to the country. And like in the years to come, we will not be able to actually get rid of the consequences, like Parisa was saying. Imagine half of the population of Afghanistan has been eliminated from public life, from participation, from exercising the basic right. How can we get back to that situation right now? Please do not recognize Taliban as a legitimate government of Afghanistan. And second of all, Taliban is responsible. They have directly taken responsibility for a lot of crimes, international crimes that has been committed in Afghanistan, direct and deliberate attacks on civilian population, attacking schools, hospitals, maternity wards. Who does that? And these reports, and what makes all of us sad in Afghanistan, extremely, extremely sad and disappointed on the international community, as Dr. Farhonda was saying, that we have so many values and so many laws internationally that we take so much pride in saying the civilized nation, this and that. But when it comes to Afghanistan, why do we actually make a blind eye and ignore these rights and values? For the first time since the Nuremberg trials or Second World War, and there's a lot of talk about accountability for war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide after the Ukraine war. But when it comes to Afghanistan, why these values are suddenly disappearing? Taliban has taken directly and deliberate responsibility for attacking journalists, killing 6 of them in one day. I witnessed, I was in the same road going, just the only lucky, they got killed in one single day and single minute. And then Taliban take responsibility for saying, yes, we did this because of this and that, because of that made a report with something on them. And then attacking educational centers, attacking hospitals. And please do not recognize Taliban, and please hold them accountable for these crimes. Any conflict like Ukraine in the world needs extremely the same attention, and the same accountability should be applied to all. It says that, unfortunately, that accountability applies only when we're not powerful anymore, or you don't have powerful friends. But let's not do that. Let's just be equal for let's hold this group accountable for the countless of lives that they have taken and they continue to take, for the oppression of women, for the gender apartheid that they are implementing in Afghanistan. And every day we don't know about direct reports of what's happening in Panjshir and Andarab, which are under the direct attacks under the Taliban in the past 1 year or more. So let's not recognize them as legitimate government, or even entertain the idea to get into dialogue with them, because they do not represent the people of Afghanistan. They are a group of terrorists that have to be held accountable for their crimes. Thank you so much. And I just wanted to end my presentation from a quote, if possible, just 1 second, from this report that was published yesterday by Kabul Now. It says an account of a female student at third year environmental engineering at Kabul Educational University that says that, in the end, it is like burying me alive. After years of living in cold and humid rooms, I suffer severe leg pain daily. I usually starve to pay my tuition fees, university fees, rent, and transport to finish my university. I thought I could slowly make up for it after I graduated and get a job, but after years of suffering and starvation, pain and harassment, I almost graduated, yet the Taliban suddenly banned women from university. Just imagine and think of that woman, what is happening to her, what the future holds for her in the Taliban-ruled Afghanistan. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Hazara. I think it is a very moving and it's a very terrible situation. And I absolutely agree. It seems like the international community has taken a selective approach to human rights. And I think it's important that we also make it accountable, make the UN accountable and the international. So shall we go to the questions? Samira?